Hello everyone and welcome back to another session of Dark Souls Remastered PvP and another weapon showcase. Today we are taking a look at the Gargoyle Tail Axe, which is a weapon that you get from cutting the tail of the Bell Gargoyles. This weapon is interesting in a couple of different ways, but we'll get into the details on that momentarily. Let's get started with the basics. This weapon requires 14 strength and 14 dexterity in order to wield. At plus 5, its base damage is 139. It has a D scaling in strength and a C scaling in dexterity. At plus 10, your scalings are unchanged, but your base damage is up to 186. And at plus 15, your base damage is 232. You have a D scaling in strength still, but you've gained a B scaling in dexterity. So overall, this weapon's base damage is pretty decent. Its scaling is only okay though, so it is what it is. Now, moving into the pros from here, a couple of the biggest pros of the weapon would be the range and the fact that it's got decent poise damage. Those two, when combined together, overcome a lot of the shortcomings that a traditional axe class weapon will have. Haha, shortcomings. With that, this weapon is dexterity based, so unlike most dexterity based weapons, it's going to be a fair bit slower. So being able to actually stun your opponent more quickly and from a decent range is very helpful. It is one of the longest axes, so that's something to really do your best to take advantage of. Beyond that though, this weapon, it's going to increase your resistances, and by a pretty substantial margin as well. So your bleed, poison, and toxic resistances will actually be doubled, which is phenomenal, especially if you're going to be using this as a weapon you choose to go with early on in the game. Most people will get it from the gargoyles. If they manage to cut their tail, they'll be like, hey, what's this? They'll try it out. They'll probably hate it because it's got a whiff animation. But for those who do use it in combat, find out, oh, hey, if I hit my opponent, I don't whiff, they actually might like it. And if they do like it, and they decide, hey, let's carry this weapon and go on from here, and they go down into Blighttown with it, the increase to the resistances is phenomenal. Especially if you're one of those individuals who wants to, go invade Blighttown. Or if you're wanting to use something along the lines of a Life Hunt Scythe. So that's what I like to use this weapon for, along with a Blood Shield. They make for good options for increasing those resistances for the Life Hunt Scythe. And they make for good options for fighting players who are using weapons that cause bleed as well in PvP. So people who use gold tracers are going to be less likely to bleed you. People who use katanas are less likely to bleed you. And on top of that, you can take advantage of the range and hit them from a bit farther away, which is always helpful. Now, that said, the cons of the weapon. I've talked a lot about the range. I have. And it's a double-edged sword, or axe in this case, I suppose. When you're using the longer axe class weapons, it seems to occur more frequently, but you'll actually be able to hit your opponent at the end of your range, but your whiff animation will still carry through. For some reason, the hit detection on this weapon, on the longer axe class weapons in general, is kind of bad. So if you hit your opponent and they're either farther along your left side instead of right on center, or if you hit your opponent and they're just at the very edge of your weapon, there's a chance that you'll actually swing through them, like I did in this fight here. Honestly, it looked like he was right on center, but for some reason it just didn't connect the right way, and it just went straight through him with the whiff. These things happen. It's something to be mindful of when you're using this kind of weapon. So, it is what it is. Other than that, though, the R2s on this weapon aren't overly useful. They're bendy and it's cool, but you're asking to get parried or backstabbed. That said, if you have a buff on them, it looks very interesting considering the fact that the buff actually desyncs from where the weapon is, which is kind of neat, but oh well. Not the most useful thing in the world. But that's all I've got this time around, guys. So thank you for watching. I hope you found the video helpful in one way or another. Feel free to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and I will see you guys next time.